Hello lovers, and welcome to the February edition of Edible Architect. In the January edition, we built this snowflake shanty using an original cardamom crisp cookie recipe. If you made it, I hope you enjoyed it. And if you didn't make it, but you'd like to, you can find the snowflake shanty cookie cutter construction set on our website, ediblearchitect.com, along with the snowflake shanty texture roller for the roof. Again, if you do join our monthly subscription, Building of the Month Club, we will go ahead and include Texture Roller for free in each month's box. So feel free to consider that. Moving on from January, I would like to present to you our February design. And for February, we have Cupid's Cookie Cottage and an accompanying heart-shaped texture roller. So included in this kit, like every other kit, is our set of cookie cutter construction cookie cutters in order to build the building, and then full instructions, including an original recipe. The original recipe for February is a gluten-free rice flour-based cookie. So it's gluten-free for anyone who specifically is looking for those recipes, but also equally delicious for anyone who's not. I picked it, or developed it rather, because it was a really crispy and delicious recipe, but it happens to be gluten-free because it uses rice flour. So we're going to go ahead. We will use that recipe in order to build this month's box. And if you're building along with me, grab your cookie cutter construction set and your texture roller, and we can go ahead and dive right in. When you're ready to begin making your dough, find your waterproof blueprints inside of your Cupid's Cookie Cottage cookie cutter construction set. And you will find at the top the recipe for our gluten-free raspberry tart cookie. Again, this is a gluten-free recipe, which is great, but it is absolutely delicious, so don't avoid making it because it's gluten-free. It really tastes like a raspberry tart. And what you'll want to do is first assemble all of your ingredients. So first we have our room temperature unsalted butter, we have our vanilla, we have our sugar, and then we have our flour mixture, which is rice flour, it is citric acid, which you can find on Amazon, raspberry powder, also on Amazon, as well as a little bit of salt and a little bit of baking soda. And you just want to whisk that together beforehand to get it nice and uniform, and you'll see that it has a nice pink color, which comes through in the cookies, which is nice. You will also want to make sure that you have your room temperature egg whites. Very important, again, that you work with room temperature egg whites. And you can go ahead, and when you're ready, just add your softened butter to either the bowl of a stand mixer or a regular bowl. If you're using a hand mixer, that's perfectly fine. And then you can go ahead and just begin to whip up your butter and then incorporate your sugar mixture so that you get a really creamy texture. Okay, so you should end up with a pretty fluffy texture once you've beaten the sugar into the softened butter. And then you're going to go ahead and add your egg whites one at a time and then beat really well after each addition. And then the second egg white. Okay, great. And now we're going to begin incorporating our flour mixture. So go ahead and whisk that together. Almost forgot our vanilla. Put that in first. So sorry, I forgot to add the vanilla, which we just added to the egg white and butter sugar mixture. Okay, add that in there, and then we can begin to add our flour mixture. So this, you're going to want to go ahead and add in about quarter to half cup increments, just so that you don't overwhelm the dough as you're mixing it together. It smells like raspberry already. Okay, and by the time that you have fully incorporated that rice flour mixture, you should end up with a clay-like dough that's like this, so somewhat crumbly, but a dough that you can work with, and a dough that will be really great for rolling out and cutting cookies out of. So go ahead, just take your dough out of the bowl. And then if you are going to be using your dough right away to make cookies, you absolutely can do so. I would go ahead and still split it in half. And then you can go ahead, wrap each ball in plastic wrap, and then that way while you're working with one, the other won't dry out. Otherwise, you can make this dough up to 24 hours in advance and just keep it in the fridge and then take it out, let it get a little bit warm, bring it to room temperature before you go to cut out your cookies. I will be making this dough right away, so I'm going to go ahead, I'll roll it in plastic wrap, and we'll come back and start rolling out our cookies. When you're ready to begin baking the dough for your cookie walls, you can go ahead and preheat your oven to 375 degrees Fahrenheit and go ahead and begin to assemble what you'll need to cut out your cookies. First, of course, grab your blueprints and then grab your Edible Architect cookie cutter construction set. In this case, we are cutting out Cupid's cookie cottage. So you can see it's a really cute heart motif that we have throughout the design, and it'll make a really cute building. On this design, as we cut the pieces out, I definitely recommend keeping the heart cutouts because you can bake them, they're little cookies, and you can glue them all over the building with some royal icing. So it's a cute idea if you like. You will also need some rice flour, so you can go ahead and powder your surfaces so that your cookies don't stick. A rolling pin, you want to look for the longest rolling pin that you can find. And if you will be making these often, I would go ahead and invest a few dollars to get these rolling pin bands to make sure that you get that perfect 1/8 inch thickness to all of your cookies, and that'll make the best, prettiest, most even looking buildings. You also, of course, want your dough balls. And then here I have a few artist's palette knives and a poker, just so that as you're cutting pieces out, if you want a tool to help you to lift the cutouts out of each piece, you can go ahead and use that. And then you can get started. Select the first piece that you're going to cut out. I'm going to start with the front wall of the house and take a piece of parchment paper. I've lined about 4 cookie sheets with parchment paper. You can do 2, you can do 3, however many you have. But you can go ahead, once you have those lined, take the parchment paper and you want to roll your dough out on the parchment paper. So we'll begin with that front wall and we'll start rolling everything out. And when you grab your dough, it should be a nice light consistency, kind of clay-like consistency that you can work with. But if you feel that it's too moist, you can go ahead and powder it with a little bit of that rice flour and then knead that flour in really well. If you think that it maybe is not moist enough, you can wet your hands a little bit and then use those wet hands in order to incorporate some moisture into the dough, and it'll be easier to work with. But this looks pretty good, so we can go ahead and just add a little bit of flour. So again, this is rice flour, so completely gluten-free. Add some to our surface. And then you also want to always flour your rolling pin as well. And we're just gonna roll this out. This cookie does tend to kind of crack when you roll it out, but don't worry, once you get it thin enough, it'll start to even out. And as always, you just wanna keep adding enough flour that your rolling pin doesn't stick. It smells amazing. It smells like raspberries already. Okay. All right, and when you're satisfied that you've got that 1/8 inch thickness, you can go ahead, grab your first piece, add a little bit of flour to the back and to the surface of your dough. And then you can go ahead and cut the piece. When you press down to cut your piece, you just want to make sure that you press around all of the cutout edges so that it makes a nice clean cut and you get a clean finished product. So just take the time. You don't have to press hard. It's plastic. You don't want to break it. But you do want to make sure that the edges of the cookie cutter make contact with your surface underneath. And then you can lift this out, leave your cookie behind, and then grab whatever tools you're using, butter knife or otherwise, in order to remove your cutouts. And try not to break the cutouts because we're going to save those and use them as cookies that we will decorate the house with. And as you go along, follow your instructions because you will need 2 each of certain pieces. You will need 2 each of the side walls, 2 each of the roof, and then 2 each of the front and sides of the chimney as well. So just make sure that you're doing 2 each of those pieces as you're cutting everything out. And as I cut everything out and I finish with a piece, I like to put it to a different pile so that I don't end up with any multiples or missing a piece because I started baking the wrong pile. Okay, and when you've cut out a full sheet of pieces, you can go ahead and just transfer that to one of your cookie sheets. And then you just want to take your dough ball and you can knead it every time. Make it workable again. Gather up any pieces that you've lost. And if your dough gets too crumbly, often just kneading it will bring it back together. But if you do need to add a little bit of moisture, if the rice flour has dried the dough out too much, then just rinse your hands under a little bit of water in the sink and then incorporate that into the dough, knead it with those wet hands, but you don't want to put too much water into your dough because it will cause steam in your dough and then that will distort the shape of your cookies. The final two pieces that we have to cut out are our two roof pieces. And this is where we will need our texture roller. So you want to either cut the pieces and then apply the texture roller, which may distort the shape a little bit. If you don't press down too hard, it shouldn't disturb the shape too much. Or you can go ahead and you can apply the texture roller in the direction that you're going to want it to appear on your roof. So in this direction. And then you can cut the pieces out afterwards, which will make perfectly clean lines. I am not sure that I'm going to have enough here to do on this cut two pieces, so I'll probably cut them first and then roll the texture on after. Okay, we've got one. It's close. Yeah, will not make two. So we'll go ahead, cut this out. And then once we've cut the piece, we'll take our texture roller and we'll roll it along the long edge of the roof so that the heart texture will appear in the proper direction on the house. So just go ahead, you can place the texture roller, press it down, but not too firmly, and then just roll it across your roof. And you'll see that you get this really cute heart pattern. So just go ahead, repeat that for the other piece of your roof, and then once you have all of the pieces cut out, put them in the oven for about 15 minutes. Keep an eye on them because you don't want them to get too brown. And any of the small pieces, like the chimney pieces or the front door, are going to bake much more quickly than the rest of the house. So go ahead and you can keep those separate or keep an eye on those and take those out earlier because they will be done sooner. But go ahead, bake all your pieces 15 minutes and then transfer them after they've cooled in the pans for 10 minutes to a wire rack to cool completely. And then I will see you back here and we can begin our construction. Once you've baked all of your pieces and they've cooled completely, you can go ahead and use a brush of some kind to brush off all of the excess flour. Especially rice flour has a very gritty texture, so you really don't want that all over the outsides of the cookies if you're going to eat them. And you also want to just take the edge of the brush and carefully just try to break off any stray pieces that might be along any edges. But you'll see that you get really nice, clean pieces with beautiful cutouts very quickly and easily with those cookie cutters. So we have all of our pieces here. I should note as well that if you're like me, you are a bit clumsy. And as I was brushing the dust off of the front of my house, I accidentally broke the front in half. But the way that I plan to decorate this, it's not a problem. So if you make the same mistake, don't worry because we're in the same boat. So once you have all of your pieces, we can move on to making the mortar, and that will enable us to begin construction. So look at your blueprints, find the section entitled mortar, and begin your recipe for mortar. You'll find the ingredients at the top. To make your mortar, you will need your 3 egg whites at room temperature. You will need your confectioner sugar and cream of tartar mixture. The cream of tartar acts as a stabilizer, and it will also give a gloss to your royal icing, so I would make sure to include it. You can get it at the grocery store. You will need a pastry bag if you have it. If not, you can use a Ziploc bag, but if you are using a pastry bag, at this point, I would cut the end and fit it with the tip if you're going to use a tip for decorating. And then I usually invert it in a cup just because it makes it much easier to fill with icing. So I would recommend those tools as well as a good spatula. And you will need either a hand mixer or ideally a stand mixer, either is fine, in order to make the royal icing because it would be impossible nearly otherwise. So you can go ahead. You do want to make sure that your egg whites are room temperature because it will make a huge difference in the icing. And then you can go ahead, add those to your mixer, and then mix those on high for 2 to 3 minutes until they start to get really frothy. and then we will begin to add our powdered sugar mix. Okay, and then once your egg whites are nice and foamy, you can go ahead and begin to add your powdered sugar mixture. And I would add it in roughly quarter cup to half cup increments. And then just make sure that it's well incorporated after each turn. And then once that's well incorporated, just turn it on and leave it on high for about 5 minutes or so, 5 to 7, depending on the consistency. But you really want it to be tacky enough that it will hold the building together, but not too stiff that you can't push it through a pastry bag. So 5 to 7 minutes on high, and then come back and it should be nice and fluffy. I'm just going to add a few drops of food coloring. Okay, and when your icing's ready, you'll know that the consistency is right when it really seems like something that would hold together a building. So it should be a nice, somewhat thick consistency, but one that you will be able to pipe through a piping bag. And then just take a spatula and start spooning your icing into your piping bag or your Ziploc bag. Again, you can just use a Ziploc bag, cut the corner out. That works almost as well. But for your piping bag with the icing, and then I just grab the collar of the pastry bag, pull it up, and then squeeze the icing down toward the tip. Okay. And then I like to just give it a twist and then use a chip clip. These are from IKEA to close off the end. And then you can give it a little test to make sure that it's the right consistency. And this is so thick that I actually may opt for a tip with a little bit of a wider opening, but this definitely will hold the house together. So I think that we are ready to move on and begin our construction process. I should mention that if you do want to put candy glass windows in the walls of the house, in each of the openings, you can certainly do so. The instructions are in your blueprints. You just want to crush up that candy, fill the openings with the crushed candy, and then put a piece of aluminum foil on a cookie sheet, put all of the pieces on there with the filled candy, and then put it in the oven at 350 for 5 minutes or just until they begin to bubble. And then cool them completely, take them out, and then you can also add any decorations that are very intricate while everything is laying flat. Let it all dry, and then gather everything that you'll need to move on to the next step, which is construction. To assemble Cupid's Cookie Cottage, you will first need a base to build it on. So you want to pick something that is at least 12 inches square or 12 inches round because that'll give you an adequate surface to build the entire building on. I like to go ahead and take the cookie cutter construction set and grab your front wall and one of your side walls and make sure that they fit if you place them on the board. You can go ahead and also trace a line along each wall, and then that will be a guide for the first two walls of your house, and it'll make sure that you have a nice square result. So I've gone ahead and I've done that. And now what I can do is find the longer line, which is going to be where I fix my back wall of the house. At this point, you also want some kind of a support. And I recommend just using the baking soda box that you had because baking soda is in the recipe. You can go ahead, place that on the board, and then that way when you place your piece, you can lean it against the support and it'll stand temporarily while you get your other pieces in place. So we have our mortar or royal icing, which I've given a shade of pink for Valentine's Day, and we can go ahead and find our back wall. So here you have your back wall. It should be a nice, crisp, clean piece, and you can go ahead and along the bottom edge, give it a line of icing. And then you can go ahead and place that down into the line that you've drawn on your board and make sure that it is nice and snug against the board, and then use your temporary support to lean that in place. At this point, you can go ahead and grab one of your side walls. So whichever you want to be this side, I'll go ahead and grab this wall. And then you want to add a line of icing along this edge on one side, and then this edge along the bottom. And then you can go ahead and you can press that down into the line that you had first created and make sure that you create a nice clean seam on the back corner. And so you've placed your first two walls. You can make sure that they're nice and square, and then you can remove your support if you'd like. It should stand on its own. And we can go ahead now and just give it a moment before we add our next wall. Okay, now you want to locate your other side wall. Take that piece, and then you are going to look at your base structure and identify which side you want to put that icing on. And then you're going to put some along the bottom edge. So that one side edge that faces the back wall and the bottom edge, add a line of icing to each side. Okay. And then we can press that into place. You want to make sure that you have roughly squared corners. Okay, great. All right. And so last, we want to go ahead and place our front wall. But as you remember, I broke mine. So I'm going to go ahead and start with this side. And I'm actually going to just add a line of icing on each of the front edges along each side here. Okay. And then just add icing to what's left of the bottom of my piece. And then I will go ahead and press that down and into place. Again, just want to make sure that the corners are nice and squared. And then we'll repeat that on the other side. And at this point, actually, I'm going to put a little bit of icing here as well, along each spot where it broke. And that will act as a little bit of glue. And then you just want to join those up as best you can and adjust your walls. And we're good. So we have our base walls completed. This piece that broke off here, I could either choose to put it back or not. I think I'm gonna just leave it the way that it is and decorate around it. And we will give this just a moment to set up and then go ahead and install our roof. So when you're ready to install your roof, you want to take your two roof pieces and decide which is the nicer piece, because you'll want that to be the front. And so I think between the two pieces, I actually like this piece a little bit better, so I'll make that my front. This one has a little crack, and I will make this my back roof. So to install your back roof, you can go ahead and dry fit it just to make sure that it will fit over the back half of the house. And you want to make sure that it won't protrude when you put it on beyond the top peak on either side of the roof. So you can go ahead, you can put that down carefully. And then you're going to add a line of icing along each of the three top edges of the back of the house. So we'll add that icing. And then we'll go ahead, we'll take that roof piece, and then making sure that the hearts are facing the right way, we will press it down into place on the back of Cupid's Cookie Cottage. And then just press it down all around just to make sure that it's making contact with the royal icing on each edge. And making sure that it doesn't protrude beyond that peak on the top of the roof. Once that's done, you can go ahead and add a line of icing along each of the front three edges at the top of the house, along the roof line. And then along the edge of the piece you just installed at the peak of the roof. And then take that front roof piece, and again, making sure that the hearts are facing in the right direction. Press that down into place and press against the edges just to make sure that everything meets up nicely and neatly. And I like to overlap that front roof just a bit over the back. And then we have our main structure. We can go ahead and put our chimney together now. The chimney will need a few minutes to set up before we install it on the top of the house. So we can go ahead, set aside our Cupid's Cookie Cottage, grab our chimney pieces. So here you have the front and the back of the chimney, and then the two side pieces of the chimney. And then the final piece is our front door. So for the chimney, go ahead and grab the front or back and add a line of icing along the left and right side, making sure that the heart is facing with the heart pointing up, actually. So you want the piece in that direction with the point of the heart facing up. Put a line of icing on either side. And then take one of the side pieces of the chimney and hold it so that the cutout of the triangle points downward, and press that down against that line of icing in order to join it with the front or back of the chimney. And then take the other side and do the same thing. And then finally take the front or back piece that remains for the chimney, add a line of icing on either side, and then again making sure that the point of the heart is pointing up because we're building the chimney upside down. We can go ahead, join those pieces together, and try to square off the edges. So we'll go ahead, we'll leave that to set up, and it will really only need a few minutes because this royal icing sets up really quickly. And then we can come back and do a little bit of decorating and we will be all finished. Now, while we wait for the chimney to dry, we can go ahead and install some lights in our house. In this base that I'm using, I drilled a hole so that I'm able to put a battery light pack below the house and snake up some lights inside so that it lights during the dinner party. You can then take the lights out before everybody smashes the house to eat it, and it just makes for a little bit of ambiance on your table. So go ahead, if you have the lights, which you can get anywhere on Amazon or at your local drugstore, just untangle them and then begin to snake them up through that hole, and then we will be able to turn them on when we're done and illuminate the house. I try to do this before I install the chimney just because I don't want to unnecessarily be shaking the structure and shake the chimney right off. So before I resume decorating, I'm going to go ahead and just take a piece of double stick tape and grab the battery pack. And then on the side that doesn't have the button, I'm going to go ahead and stick the double stick tape, peel the back, and then stick it to the underside of my board. And then that way it's almost invisible to my guests when I put it on the table. And in fact, the rest of the wire for the lights I can put up inside the house as well. And you can barely see it. All right, so our chimney should definitely be dry by now, so you can grab it and just make sure that it holds shape. And then you are going to look for the bottom edge, so that's the side with the cutouts that will sit on the peak of the roof. And you want to go ahead, grab your royal icing, and add a line of icing along the entire bottom on all four sides. And you can use a really generous amount. And then go ahead, pick a spot on your roof where you'd like your chimney, maybe right here. And you don't want to press down too hard because you don't want to break your chimney apart, but you do want to seat it firmly along the roof line. So we have our chimney, and now we can go ahead and add in some decorations. You can see here that I retained the vast majority of the heart cutouts for the windows, and I'm going to go ahead and start gluing those onto the house. So there's really no right or wrong way to do this. So we have our completed Cupid's Cookie Cottage, and we can go ahead and give it some light. Maybe make this a party. So there you have it, Cupid's Cookie Cottage. When you're ready to clean up, you can wash your cookie cutter construction set and your texture roller in the sink with warm soap and water. Do not put them in the dishwasher. And then dry them completely. You can return the cookie cutter set to its plastic bag and put it back in the box. You can roll up your waterproof blueprints, which you can rinse off if they get dirty. You can wipe them down. And then when they're dry, roll them back up and put them back in the box. Take your texture roller, once it's dry, put it back in the cylinder, and you're ready for your next build. I hope you enjoyed this. If you did, please show us some love. I personally heart this design, and I hope that you do too. You can find us at Edible Architect on social media or at ediblearchitect.com. Thanks so much, and I can't wait to see what you build. Just take your time. Sure.